I'm telling you, Jeremiah, I'm so glad Lincoln's check came in. Catering and staff makes everything better. We're filming. Why didn't you tell me this? Uh, this week we see the degradation of our opponents as the many years of struggle take their toll. Not that it's one-sided. The Union has suffered. The secession crisis turned conflict has spared no one from its evil ends. But the end is in sight. If Sherman can break Johnston or Grant destroy Lee, well, we can expect Independence Day to be celebrated as it should. But there must be more bloodshed before such a beautiful day. The first thing this week will be the Bermuda 100 campaign. Sadly, there are no more animations for me to rely on, just a summary of the battle. The rebels wanted to construct a defensive line, sent forward brigades to push back the Union pickets. The pickets were reinforced, so was the Confederate advance. But at the end of the day, with over 10,000 men engaged, 900 Federal losses, 500 Confederate losses, the defensive line is slightly smaller. All that loss of life. The final battle of this campaign. Just to make the Howlett line smaller. 14 U.S. states lost sons, and teenagers are permanently scarred, physically and mentally, all for a few hundred feet of dirt. God damn it! The week's brutality isn't over. Let's turn to General Robert.E.Lee. He receives a communication from President Davis. It contains updates about every other theater of the war, but leaves his theater at his complete discretion. It appears as if Lee is being set up to take over all of the rebel army, just as his opponent, General-in-Chief Grant, has for the Union. Now, he has been the unofficial leader of the Confederate armed forces, but maybe it's time the paperwork made it clear. The 21st movement begins. Lee has to match Grant, keeping the Union away from Richmond, under strict orders. Remember how Davis gave Lee complete discretion? Well, that is under a considerable asterisk. Richmond, Richmond, Richmond. Lee must stay at the city's defense. This ties one hand behind the Virginians' defense, but he hopes to get it back. General Beauregard has bottled up Butler, and if PGT's army can join Lee, they can work together to destroy Grant's army. Lee, wanting this to happen, writes to President Davis, asking for Beauregard and not just his army. They can be equals, but this is rejected. Pierre has told the president that he needs more men. Butler is receiving reinforcements. This isn't true. Butler is actually losing a corps, but either out of fear or want of glory, Lee's planned companion refuses to come to his side. No matter, the Army of Northern Virginia is a strong one and can handle the Army of the Potomac. Both sides move towards Hanover Junction on the North Anna River, a site close to New Market, allowing General Breckinridge to reinforce Lee, as do a few of Pickett's brigades, but not the commander himself. General Robert.E.Lee has suffered. The army is sick as they form for battle at North Anna. The Wilderness and Spotsylvania have taken their toll, not just on the rank and file. Longstreet wounded, the officer corps filled with inexperienced colonels leading brigades they should never have, and Lee himself is sick.
Good health is indispensable in war.
A nasty bout of diarrhea proves the old Virginian has spent his health. He wants to strike General Meade. He wants to break the enemy. He has his army not dig in. They must be ready for battle. But he can't lead them. He holds the army in a sole position, but seems to be waiting for General Grant to move. For you see, Hanover Junction is the perfect place to spring a trap. The meeting point of the Virginia Central and Richmond and Fredericksburg and Potomac railroads, with the North Anna River in front of it. The river is also significantly lower than the rebel positions. It sounds fantastic. So what's the catch? There are many crossings, but that's no matter. Let the Union cross, or what Lee actually means, let them try. This is a lot of build-up for North Anna because this is less of a battle and more of a chess match. The terrain favors defense even more than the trenches of Spotsylvania. Quick maneuvers and positioning, not strength of arms, will decide the day. 1100 hours, May 23rd, General Gouverneur K. Warren takes a break from the constant marching to get some shade at Mount Carmel Church. General Grant's strategy to wear out the rebels has worn out his own men. There's a momentary pause to allow the Union force to concentrate. It is decided for the 2nd Corps under General Winfield Hancock to continue the march directly south. Warren is to make a diversion to the west. Lee decides to do reconnaissance in person, but worrying about his health, he hands over his faithful steed Traveler, takes a carriage to the front. He gets out at Ambrose Powell Hill's section, who has just recovered enough from his illness to take back command, though he isn't confident. The two don't speak, and Lee rides off. Lee's the Union to be merely tricking him. There's no way they would assault North Anna. To do so would mean splitting their forces between the many different crossings. It's a diversion. Hill comes to understand Lee's hand-waving, and when he gets news of an attempted crossing, he sends the sole division of General Wilcox to do a reconnaissance in force, and sends Heth to reinforce him sometime after. Everyone knows the main action won't be in the west, but in the center, Chesterfield Bridge. Before it, in the smoldering summer heat, is the advanced force of Longstreet's Corps, under the command of Major General Anderson. Colonel Hennigan and his South Carolinians have dug their redoubt and feel safe behind their dirt walls. When they hear tumbling in the forest, bang, a shot goes out, and hands reach for muskets. Cannons have been dueling for a while, but the assault of the Federal Second Corps comes as a shock, and soon the rebels are forced to retreat, burning the bridge behind them. They aren't pursued. The excellent artillery commander, Colonel Alexander, ensures that. Perhaps General Warren heard of Hancock's success. Maybe the news reached his subordinates as they finished crossing at Jericho. All we know is they were confident as the sun began to set. A false confidence. Wilcox strikes on the flanks of General Lysander Cutler's line and routs it. The entire Union position is thrown into chaos as musketry ignites the night. The surprise of the secessionists does them well, but outnumbered and with Heth nowhere to be seen, they are forced back. This is a great defeat. Great missed opportunity. Warren was alone, isolated. If Hill had sent more men, or had ensured Heth was quicker, the 5th Corps could have been broken, or he had struck during the crossing and not after. If only things were different. General Lee, sick and with empty bowels, moves to Hill and berates the Corps commander in front of his subordinates.
General Hill, why did you let those people cross here? Why didn't you throw your whole force on them and drive them back as Jackson would have done?
This is unfair. Hill has just got him back. All those ifs I said aren't the Corps commander's fault, but Lee's. He hadn't known that this was a diversion. The old Virginian is sick in the head and in the body, nostalgic for past commanders, and not just Stonewall.
If I'd had my poor Stuart with me, I would know what those people are up to.
This is a fair complaint. The failure of American intelligence was caused by the brilliance of Stuart as a cavalry commander. The Confederate intelligence was mostly due to him. He could figure out what reports were accurate and which were overblown. He could predict and plan, and Lee doesn't have that anymore. So he takes it out on Hill. Breaking apart from the actions at North Anna, let's talk about the Battle of Wilson's Wharf. The site is home to Brigadier General Edward A. Wild and his African Brigade of 1,100 men. In addition is a white artillery battery and the USS Dawn that sounds a lot like Fort Pillow. They're at the wharf to free slaves and diminish Confederate power in eastern Virginia. They have been successful. Their numbers have grown with free men. In one event, they even whipped a slave owner. This terrified the Confederate public, and their words met with General Braxton Bragg's ears.
Break up this nest and stop their uncivilized proceedings. Surprise and capture, if possible, a garrison of Negro soldiers at Cannon's Wharf.
These orders go to Major General Lee, and 2,500 Confederates riot to complete Bragg's wishes. Lee and his men underestimate the fighting ability of any former slave. To be defeated by colored troops would be the ultimate embarrassment. Oh, how I wish for it to happen. When the rebels arrive on the morning of the 24th, they spot the Union fortification, only a third complete, and a significantly smaller federal force than their own. Lee believes he can quickly overrun and capture this force, or cause it to flee and prove the black soldiers are cowards. He is in for a rude awakening. In a lightning strike, he orders his men forward, hoping to break the line of communication to the USS Dawn. But immediately the rebels struggle, as the pickets of the United States colored troops hold their ground. Unfortunately, they are outnumbered. Many are forced back and a few are captured. Now for the actual fortification, Fort Pocahontas. The secessionists dismount and begin their advance. Union guns are silent. Perhaps the Federals did flee. But just as the rebels reach the forward line of the abattisses, a terrifying volley goes out. General Wild had his men hold their fire till it could maximize the effect. The effect is the destruction of Confederate cohesion, as for an hour and a half it becomes a turkey shoot. North Carolinians cut down in a foreign state, and Virginians painting their state's dirt red. After 90 minutes, Lee calls his men back and tries a more diplomatic approach. Under a white flag, he has his two officers offer surrender terms. Black soldiers will be treated as prisoners of war, but if they don't surrender, he can't ensure their safety. He is definitely threatening another Fort Pillow, hoping to install terror into his opponents. Does it work?
Present my compliments to General Lee and tell him to go to hell. Take the fort if you can.
No, it doesn't work. The order is given to kill all those in the fort, as half of Lee's command is sent against the fort's most robust line, and the other against the weakest. The Federal troops realize the situation and don't give an inch, firing volleys into their opponents, aided by grape shot from the White Battery and the USS Dawn. Everywhere the rebels are repulsed, and, upon seeing blue reinforcements, Major General Fitzhugh-Lee accepts his defeat, utterly embarrassed, and falls back. The Union suffered only a small portion of the losses of Lee, who suffered about 4 times their number. Not that I have specifics. This was the first time the Army of Northern Virginia faced black soldiers, and they failed utterly. Beautiful. But we must now return to the barbarity of war. Lee has reformed his line in what is often referred to as a reverse V. For some reason, I only saw it called this, not a triangle or pyramid. I guess because it doesn't have the base. Am I missing something? Like, is it referred to a reverse V in a primary source? This does tempt Grant, just as the bloody ankle did at Spotsylvania, unaware that this position is much more secure. Old Ulysses wants a chance at victory more than anything, and it blinds him.
If I can get one more pull at Grant, I will defeat him.
He rushes the 2nd Corps across Chesterfield Bridge. The 2nd U.S. sharpshooters clear rebel pickets out of the way. In a quick dash, he has crossed North Anna. His forces split, and only a few holding the river crossing. The rebels try to hinder the federal movement and burn the railroad crossing, but members of the 8th Ohio cut a tree and find a way across. The Union has made its way. Lee has lost.
Then we have fallen back from North Anna. We are in pursuit.
It's a trap. Grant wanted to see victory, so he fell for the mirage. Meade can tell it's a trap and wants no part in being massacred. General Ambrose Burnside is independent and reports directly to the General-in-Chief. One of his divisions take a ford, and the other goes to General Thomas L. Crittenden. That name sounds very familiar. General Thomas L. Crittenden to cross Quarles Mill and strike the tip of the V. Wait, Crittenden, how did he get command in the East? Last we saw him, he was court-martialed for Chickamauga in the big brawl with General Rosecrans that ultimately went nowhere. And he would have been left without command if it wasn't for the death of General Stevenson, who a lone colonel would have replaced if it wasn't for Crittenden. Therefore, he was plucked out of the drawer Lincoln keeps field commanders in and plopped into command. Crittenden's lead brigade is under the command of Brigadier General James H. Liddell. He is charismatic, a true charmer, a former artillery commander who has had a run of bad luck with mutiny and being put in boring positions. He's accused of loving the bow too much, if you catch my drift, but I'm sure it's just rumors like those against Grant. And he is drunk, isn't he? Well, okay, at least he isn't wholly sloshed. Spotting opportunity, he strikes against General William Mahone's division with his regiments. This is not good. The 35th Massachusetts is sacrificed in a bloody assault. He asks Crittenden for more men. Crittenden is outraged. The division isn't in position. Why is Liddell assaulting? He sends an officer with a message, ordering a cessation of battle. And when the officer arrives, Liddell is completely hammered. Why is this our army? God. The officer is dismissed and ignored. Liddell gestures towards some artillery and yells, "Charge!" The 56th and 57th Massachusetts move forward, but those batteries force them to fall into ditches for cover. Mahone's infantry then steps out onto the parapets, look down at the cowering New Englanders, and begin their turkey shoot. The leaders of both regiments are wounded, one mortally so. The brigade falls back, and Liddell, for his foolish, egoistic, narcissistic failure, is promoted to division command. What? 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 The 2nd Corps, in the thunderstorm that has now overtaken the battlefield, advances further, moving against the rebel line. But these breastworks are too strong. General Gibbon falters, and even with aid from General Birney, our men can't make headway. There it is for Lee, the perfect trap. The 2nd Corps is all alone, the 9th Corps a complete failure. Lee gets ready to lead a charge to break Grant's army, and his trousers are filled. Yep. I didn't expect diarrhea to save the Union, but here we are. The night of the 24th is one of action. The sound of axes as the Army of the Potomac fixes more pontoon bridges across the river, so the full federal force can be united. Grant and Meade, ready to shoot each other, come to an agreement. Grant's leadership of the 9th Corps has been a failure, and Burnside will no longer report to the Lieutenant General, but to Meade. But what about Burnside outranking Meade? Ambrose agrees to just forget about it, perfectly happy to report to Gordon. As for Lee, he's alone in his tent, crying.
We must strike them a blow. We must never let them pass again. We must strike them a blow.
The two sides spend the next 2 days just staring at each other. The Union has lost 591 KIA, 2,734 WIA, and 661 MIA for 3,986 total. Lee lost 124 KIA, 74 WIA, 724 MIA for 1,552 total. Grant, sure success, wires General Halleck.
Lee's army is really whipped. The prisoners we now take show it. and the actions of his army show it unmistakably. Battle with them outside of entrenchments cannot be had. Men feel that they have gained the morale over the enemy and attack him with confidence. May be mistaken, but I feel that our success over Lee's army is already assured.
He then orders the march towards Cold Harbor. Now for the in-between. President Abraham Lincoln will start us off. He instructs the Army and Navy not to interfere or delay any transaction, even in the heart of the rebellion, as long as it follows the Treasury Department's regulations. It seems a matter of coin has swayed the commander-in-chief. The next day, he sends word to the governors in the West to
sustain General Sherman's lengthening lines,
asking them to send forward 100-day troops to guard the logistical and communication pathways for William. The start change of command segment was one I brought up last week. The 21st, Major General Franz Sichel was replaced by, wow, we haven't seen him in ages, Major General David Hunter. I would usually comment on what Hunter brings, but he is under too strict of a leash to bring his unique style to the department. Grant gives him an order, burn the valley down. The 26th, the other switch, seeing Brigadier General John P. Hatch's command of the Department of the Southwest temporary, as Major General John Foster takes over. He is the correct choice. He has experience with coastal conflict, taking part in Burnside's North Carolina expedition, which he then took over. He has also worked with free men, setting up a colony of emancipated men, women, and children. I look forward to seeing his leadership in action. The same day, Montana is created, split off from the Idaho Territory. Moving on, General Sherman and his command is in full pursuit of General Joseph E. Johnston's Army of Tennessee. So far, Johnston has surrendered 50 miles and lost 3,888 men, ending up by Allatoona Mountain, and is in contention with his boss, President Jefferson Davis. After being rebuked by Davis, Johnston responds that his army has grown as he now has a shorter supply line and is able to take those who had to guard it into his brigades. Furthermore, he held down Sherman, stopping the West from reinforcing the East. Bragg has hope for Johnston, or at least he pretends to.
From the hot condition which the army has reported, we confidently rely on a brilliant success.
Johnston's position at Allatoona is good, but there's an issue. Sherman knew more of Georgia than the rebels did. As a young officer, William marched across the exact same land and has intimate knowledge of the terrain. This allows him to break off from his supply line. 20 days. 20 days of rations to sustain his men and bring them into striking distance of Johnston. Not to bring battle to the wily rebel army, but to assault the supply depot. The morning of the 23rd, the Union crosses a river just south of Kingston, where this is spotted by rebel cavalry, which reports back to Johnston. All three of his infantry corps begin their march to New Hope Church. The first to arrive is Lieutenant General Hardee's men, who set up a stout defense. 0700 hours. Brigadier General John Gary's division is marching straight toward General Hardee's line. Division to the left and right. But the rest of General George Henry Thomas's force is 5 miles away. Gary receives a visitor. Captured enemy courier. He carries a dispatch from the rebel cavalry commander Jackson. No, not that one. Nor that one. How many Jacksons are there? Brigadier William Hicks Jackson has accidentally leaked Johnston's position. When Sherman sees the message, he thinks hard and dismisses it as nonsense. Gary continues his march, entering into the thickened wood. The skirmishers report back an engagement, a harrowing firefight. General Hood has sent Colonel Bushrod Johnson to develop the enemy. They hold the Federals back for a while, losing 61 men in the process. The Union line is extended to a mile, pressing up against Hood and Hardee. General Joseph Hooker, who commands the corps, halts Bluecoats, allowing General Williams and General Butterfield's divisions, the ones protecting Gary, to close in. Sherman backs this order. 1700 hours, 25th. The brigades of Hooker form up a column, 16,000 men, ready to drive their wedges into the Confederate positions.
The discharge of canister and shell from the enemy were heavier than in any other battle of the campaign in which my command was engaged.
General Gary is not exaggerating. Cannon fire from rebel officer A.P. Stewart is deadly. It, combined with the marksmanship of the secessionists, repulses multiple charges, as Old Straight, Stewart's nickname, rides back and forth, shouting encouragement.
No more persistent attack or determined resistance was anywhere made.
When asked by Johnston if he needed reinforcements, he confidently replied,
"My own troops will hold the position."
Stewart is correct. Not a single Union man reaches within 50 yards. 1900 hours, the crack of thunder.
The rain came down in torrents. The lightning was blinding. Then the darkness so black it could almost be felt.
Ammunition dwindles, but the musket fire is the only way for many to see their opponent. As the rain pours, the Union falls back. Hooker sees General Howard and informs him the battle is over. Stewart suffered 400 losses, Hooker 1,665 men. The storm continues throughout the night, but as dawn breaks, it subsides.
A strong line of entrenchments facing us, with heavy force of infantry and guns. Battle was renewed, but without success.
The night of the 26th, we turn to Johnston, who is confident in his line and makes a move. Claiborne's division is to move to Pickett's Mill. Pickett's Mill is Federal General McPherson's HQ. Next week, we will see the continuation of this battle. Then there is our beloved Sickles. He returns to Tennessee, this time Memphis, where he meets with officials. One such being General Cadwalader Washburn, who's taking an extreme measure to stop smuggling, having encircled the city to stop the selling of what he estimates as $500,000 worth of goods. My lord! Which is worse, he is sieging a loyal city with the fact that $500,000 worth of goods have been sent to the secessionists. That's where the week ends. And let's look at the Union Army. It's a national tragedy. The fact we have officers like Liddell is a shame. It's a weird mixture we have in the officer corps, and experienced local politicians and armchair West Pointers giving command over formations they're only used to leading from an armchair. Those in the armchairs themselves are doing much. We have brilliant leaders like General Upton, General Thomas, and General Sickles, but competence is offensive to the chain of command. Let's hope the fact Burnside is under Meade is a sign of things to come. Hi, it's the entire Civil Week by Week team here. And yeah, it's actually the entire team. Jeremiah was made up, just like everyone who claims to have that name. It's been an honor being your trusted reporter throughout this many years. And now we're back in St. Louis for our 10th and probably final set. I hope to see you next week. And if I don't, I wish you the best.